Hey guys, this is Test 65 Game 4. This is the television programs game. It's an ordering game. We know this because the programs are shown one after the other, meaning that there must be an order in which they are shown. Now I've laid out a bunch of stuff here, but I'm going to explain all of it. We've got the programs here, G, R, S, T, W. I've laid out two G's here because G is an hour long, whereas the other programs are only a half hour long each. So I laid out 1, 1:30, 2, 2:30, 3, 3:30. So the G's are going to take up two of these spaces which together comprise 1 hour long. Now they tell us that G starts on the hour, not the half hour. I'll deal with that later. Make a mark next to it or something, I'll come back to it. We've got T's on the half hour rather than the hour, which means that T never starts on 1, 2, or 3. It will have to start on 1:30, 2:30, or 3:30. So I put down where it's not going. They tell us that R is before S, meaning that S cannot be 1 and R cannot be on 3:30, which is the last space here. Then finally, if W is before T, then it must occur consecutively in that order. So this is a general bare bones diagram for the game. I will do something with that first rule we discussed, though, that G starts on the hour rather than the half hour. So it's either GG on 1, 1:30, GG on 2, 2:30, or GG on 3, 3:30. You never have G on like 1:30 to 2 or from 2:30 to 3. That's not permitted based upon this rule. So I'm going to lay out a new set of diagrams based upon the potential placements of the G's that occur consecutively. So here are the three main diagrams. I've got the G's on 1 and 1:30, the G's on 2 and 2:30, and the G's on 3 and So here are the three main diagrams. I've got the G's on 1 and 1:30, on 2 and 2:30, and on 3 and 3:30 for each of these three diagrams. Now I've made a few additional inferences here. Because we know that R has to go before S in the top diagram, I was able to infer that for that diagram specifically, S cannot go on 2 o'clock. Because if S did go on 2 o'clock, we would not have room for R to go before it. And in the third diagram, we can infer that R cannot go on 2:30, because if it did, there would not be room for S to come after it. So these are the three main diagrams for the game that we can use as we jump into the questions. Now question number 17 is a typical orientation question. Just take one rule at a time and apply it to all 5 choices looking for violations. Now be careful here because the choices are not referring to the times. They're referring to the ordering of the programs from 1st through 5th. Remember that although there are 6 variables here, there's only 5 different unique variables. So remember that whenever you see G, you have to imagine a second G there as well. If you want to, you could even insert a little extra G next to the G that's written for each choice. It will make it a bit easier to tackle. Now let's check to see whether we have T occurring on any full hour on 1, 2, or 3, as we know that is never permitted. So if you scan through the choices, you see that choice A actually has T starting on the hour. It has T starting on 3 o'clock. We have the G's on 1 and 1:30. We have R on 2, W 2:30, T on 3. Unacceptable. So for that reason, A is eliminated for number 17. Now let's go on to the rule that R is before S, because that's a rather easy thing to check for. As we scan through, we find that choice E has S before R, which is unacceptable. So for that reason, E is eliminated. Next, let's move on to the rule that if we have W before T, it must occur consecutively. That's also easy to check for in this instance. Scanning through the choices, we see that we have W before T in choice D, but W and T are not consecutive. So for that reason, D can be eliminated. We're now down to B and C. Now let's check for the thing that G's occur only on the hour and half hour consecutive, with the hour coming first. So 1, 1:30, 2, 2:30, or 3, 3:30. As we scan through the choices remaining, B and C, we see that choice C actually has G starting on the half hour. It has G starting on 2:30 and then continuing to 3 o'clock. We know this because there's only one single thing after that. So S must be starting on 3:30, meaning that G is starting on 2:30, which is unacceptable. So for that reason, choice C is eliminated, leaving B for number 17. Next, number 18, if W is the first program. So right away we know the top diagram is not relevant because it has G on 1. I'm going to look at the middle and bottom diagrams with W on 1. Now, if W is the first program, T comes immediately after it according to this rule right here. So I'm going to put WT down on both of those. Then we have R and S remaining. And we know that R has to go before S. So I'm going to put R on 2 and S on 230 on the bottom diagram, R on 3, S on 330 in the middle diagram. And these are the two scenarios that we use to jump into the questions. We see that they're fully determined here. So they ask how many orders could there be. We see there's one order from the middle diagram, one order from the bottom diagram. That makes 2 altogether. So B is our answer for number 18. Next, number 19, if R is the second program. So on the top diagram, that would place R right on 2 o'clock. On the middle diagram, it would place R on 1:30. And on the bottom diagram, it would also place R on 1:30. Now, we know for the top diagram, which is more defined because everything is coming after R here. R is not in the middle of stuff. Everything open is coming after R. So we have S, W, and T remaining. We know that T cannot be on 3 o'clock because it only goes on half hours. So for that reason, we know that T will either be on 2:30 or 3:30. So I'll make two different possibilities within this one here. T on 2:30, T on 3:30. Now in the bottom version of that, we know W has to go on 3 because it has to go immediately before T if it's going before T at all, which is what the last rule of the game says. That would leave R to S to go on 2:30. And then on the top possibility here, we know that S and W are interchangeable on 3 and 3:30. We could have S on 3, W on 3:30, or W on 3, S on 3:30. Either way, S is still after R, so all of that checks out. Now, on the other possibilities, things are a bit more open-ended. We know that neither T nor S could go on 1, so what does that leave? It leaves W. But W cannot really go on 1 here, because if it did, it would come earlier than T, and if W goes before T, it must go immediately before T. Therefore, both of these diagrams end up being irrelevant. The top one is the only one that matters, and that's what we're going to use as we run through the choices here. So what could be true? 4 of these things could be true. Find the 4, eliminate them, whatever remains is your answer. Could S be third? Yes, S could be the third program. We have G and R as the 2 programs before it, S as the third, W is the fourth, T is the fifth. Remember that we are referring to programs. We are not referring to time slots. So we have to count the G's as one program. So for that reason, A is automatically eliminated. S is the fourth program. If we had GRTS, then yes, S would be fourth, W would be fifth. That works out fine, so B is gone. Next choice C, could T be fifth? We could have T as the last program here. We could have GRSWT. T would be program number 5. So yes, that's possible as well. C is eliminated. D, W as the third program. No, the third program is always going to be either T or S. We have G and R before. So for that reason, the earliest that W could ever be is the fourth program with GRTS before it. Therefore, D is impossible. It's our answer to number 19. I will look at E though. W is the fifth program. Yes, W could be last. GRTSW, which would make it the fifth program. So yes, E is eliminated, leaving D for number 19. Next, number 20. If S is the third program, what must be true? So the middle diagram is going to be irrelevant right away because S would have to be on 2 o'clock in order to have exactly 2 things coming before it. That diagram is not going to be relevant. So for the top diagram, in order for S to be on 3, I'm going to put it on 2:30, and I'm going to put S on 2 o'clock in the bottom diagram. Now R must go before S, so R is going to go on 2, and on the bottom diagram here, we're going to have R and T coming before S. T will have to be on 1:30, and R will have to be on 1 o'clock. We can't have W up here because if W is before T, it must go immediately before T, and there wouldn't be any room for that here given that R has to go before S at all times. So that leaves W to go smack on 2:30. In the top diagram here where we have W and T remaining, T has to go on 3:30, and W has to go on 3 o'clock. So everything is fully determined down to these 2 specific possibilities for number 20. Now we'll just run through the choices. Must G be the first program? No, R could be the first program, leaving A to be eliminated. Must R be the first? No, of course. G could be the first, eliminating B. Must R be the second program? That could happen here, but down here R could be the first, so C is gone. Must T be the fifth? No, we could have G be the fifth on 3:30 there, so D is gone, leaving E by elimination. Then if you look at it, must W be the fourth? Yes, it must. We could have RGRSW or RTSW. Either way, W does have to be fourth in either scenario, so E is our answer to number 20. Next, number 21. If G was the third program, what could be true? So right away, we're crossing off the top diagram and the bottom diagram. They're not relevant here because they would have G being either first or having G being fifth. So this is the only one that matters. Now they're asking us what could be true. Of course, things are pretty open-ended. We can make, a few additional inferences here if we like. We know that W cannot be on 130 because T cannot be on 1. So if W were on 130, T would have to come much later, and it would not be able to be immediately before T as the rule here requires. So we'll just jump into the choices now regarding what could be true. Could R be the second program? Yeah, that seems fine. But if we try it out, we run into a problem. We'd have R on 130, we'd have S coming much later, we could have S coming perhaps here, leaving T to be there, but then we run into the issue where W has to come immediately before T. That's not permitted. So this one actually doesn't work out, so for that reason, A is eliminated. Next, looking at B, R being the fifth program, of course that is never possible because R can't be on 330 or else it wouldn't be able to have S coming after. So for that reason, B is eliminated as well. Next, looking at C, if S was the fourth program. So if S is the fourth program, we're putting it right there on 3 o'clock, and we'll have 1, 2, 3 things, G being the third thing coming before S. So if we try it out, well, let's see what happens. We could put R on 130, we could put W on 330 to avoid having it come before T, leading to the WT box problem, then putting T on 1. Turns out that actually doesn't work because T can never be on 1, but what if we switched R and T around? What if we put T on 130 and R on 1 o'clock? Then it would actually work out perfectly fine. We'd have R, T, G as the 3 things before S. We'd have R before S as is required. We wouldn't have W before T, so this rule wouldn't be activated. Everything would check out perfectly fine. So for that reason, C is our answer to number 21. I will look at D and E though. T is the fourth program, of course, does not work because T cannot be on 3 o'clock. So T would have to be either the second program or the fifth program in this scenario. So D is gone. Then I'll look at E, W as the second program. Of course, that was an initial inference we made when considering the question stem of this question at the very beginning of it. So for that reason, E is eliminated as well. Next, number 22, general cannot be true question. Nothing to do here but run through the choices. Of course, 4 of them can be true, 1 of them cannot be true. So we can hope, of course, that previous work may end up helping us out. So S immediately before G. We actually did see that back in question number 18. We had the scenario WTR-SGG, proof that that is possible, so A is eliminated. Next, B, W immediately before R. Again, scan through previous scenarios here to see whether that's ever happened. No matches there. We could take a closer look at it now. W immediately before R would give us WR as a box right there, and of course R is always before S, so we could tack that on there as well. Now let's think about where this might occur. We need to structure it in such a way that T will come earlier than W, because if W was before T, we'd have to have W immediately before T. So it's actually a longer sequence, T before WR before S. So where would we have room for such a thing? Not in the middle scenario, there's no room for it there. We would have, the only place WR could fit here would not be on 3 or 330, it'd be on 1 and 130, but then T could not come earlier. In this scenario right here, it doesn't work because T cannot be on 2 o'clock. And in the bottom scenario, it doesn't work because we'd have to have TWRS, again, T cannot be on 1 o'clock on the hour. So for that reason, WR as a box is actually impossible, and B is our answer to number 22. I will look at the rest though. G immediately before S, have we ever seen that occur? Yes, we actually just saw it in question number 21 where we had RTGGSW. That worked out perfectly fine, so C is gone. D, R immediately before T. We also saw that in number 21, as well as in number 20, as well as in number 19. So for that reason, we know it's possible. D is eliminated. Then looking at E, T immediately before W. Have we ever seen that occur? Yes, we saw it in question number 19, where we had GGR, TWS. So we know that it's possible. For that reason, E is eliminated, and B is our answer for number 22 if you didn't get it before. Finally, number 23, this is a rule substitution question. So they're asking us which one of the following rules would have an equivalent effect to the first rule of the game regarding the G placements on 1, 130, 2, 230, 3, and 330. So the new proposed correct answer choice will have to be no more limiting than the rule here and no less limiting than this rule. It has to have an equivalent effect. So scan through the choices. You could start by asking yourself whether an answer choice would have permitted what we saw in a previous valid scenario. Because if it did, if it does not permit that, then we know it is too limiting and can be eliminated. Also, if it's less limiting, then we know that's not equivalent and can be eliminated as well. So let's run through the choices, asking ourselves if anything seems particularly likely. So choice C jumps out to me because it says G is neither 2 nor 4 in terms of program listing. Now, we know that G is always the first, the third, or the fifth program. Always. So simply saying that G is not second or fourth would make it first, third, or fifth, and would not do anything additional beyond that. So for that reason, C is a perfect replacement for the original rule of the game and is our answer for number 23. I will look at the rest though. A is saying G is not immediately before T, so we could never have GT occurring consecutively. Now, we've never seen that happen, of course. It's not possible because if G was on 1 and 130, and of course T cannot be on 2, they'd never be consecutive with G before T. On the middle diagram, T cannot be 3 o'clock, and on the bottom diagram, of course, T is not coming after 3:30 because there's no such thing. However, would that have an equivalent effect? No, it would not, because it would still allow G to start on the half hour. G could have started perhaps on 1:30, going on to 2, and then T would be on 2:30, or we could have G starting on 2:30, extending to 3 o'clock, and then have T on 3:30. So for that reason, A is not limiting enough and can be eliminated. Looking at B, G either first or fifth, this is not limiting enough because G could still start on 2 o'clock, being the third program. Let's look at D. If G is third, R is first. G has been on third in many cases, and in some of those cases, R has been first, like in question 21, we had the scenario RTGGSW. However, we could still have G be on third and something else be on first. Back in number 18, we had the scenario WTGGRS, which had G on third and had W on first. Therefore, D is more limiting than the original rule, not equivalent. Finally, looking at choice E, if G is not first, it is later than T. So if G is not on 1, then we have T before G. This does not work because we could still have G appearing third on 2 p.m., yet have T coming after that. So have we ever had a scenario like that? No, we haven't, but we could easily draw it out. We could have G starting on 2 o'clock being the third program. We could have T on 3:30, have W on 3, and then have R on 1, S on 1:30. That scenario works out perfectly fine. So as such, E is too limiting and not equivalent, so E is gone, leaving C as our answer for number 23.